Hello, welcome back to the Life Runners podcast. Auction season is winding down. It was great to watch and participate in the auctions this past week. If you didn't know, all the major watch houses had auctions that took place in New York City, and was kind of the final couple of auctions that took place for this year. I did cover on the last podcast some of my favorite lots from each of the auctions, so be sure to check that out. But I actually think that the auctions that took place this last week, show quite an interesting, I don't want to say change, but I think it shows a little bit about the current watch market, and I think it shows some pretty interesting trends that I think we're going to see going into 2023. So all the major watch houses, Sotheby's, Christies, Phillips, they all had watch auctions that took place. If you want to see them, go back to the other episode so you can see that. I will call out the New York Watch Auction, the New York Watch Auction 7 that was hosted by Phillips was kind of a landmark result for them. They had 175 rare and important watches that they sold this past weekend. The sales that were realized in this auction were $21.1 million US dollars overall. This brought their annual total New York-based watch auction total to 51.5, which is a world record for the Americas from all the watch auction houses. What was really an amazing achievement, though, was the fact that they were able to sell all of their lots, and this kind of marked 2 consecutive years that Phillips sold 100% of its timepieces, which was the first time any auction house has been able to accomplish something like that. There were new world records and high sales for things like FP Journe's, Grand Seiko's, George Daniel's, Patek Philippe's, and Urwerk's. There was an FP Journe Tourbillon Souverain in platinum with a rose gold dial that is known, only one of 6 are known to have been produced with this type of dial, and it was purchased for $1.24 million US dollars, which tied the previous world record sale for that specific model. There was also a piece unique Grand Seiko Coda Constant Force Tourbillon that sold at Phillips, and sold for $478,800 US dollars, which was a world record for a Grand Seiko piece sold there. There was a one-of-a-kind Urwerk that was really cool that set a world record, $403,000 US dollars. So plenty of really great sales that took place here. There was also a really incredible perpetual calendar chronograph from Patek Philippe signed by House, which is thought to be the only known version of the I believe it was a 2499. I could be wrong there, but I believe it was a 2499 third series that sold, but didn't fetch what I thought it was going to. And that kind of gets me to the main point of this podcast is I have a feeling we are back to basics. I was lucky enough to go and be in the room for many of these auctions. I spent some time at Phillips during their auction, and the trend that I noticed is a little bit of a slowdown. I think everyone knows that the hype over specific models of watches has kind of calmed down, but I think this auction, this past week of auctions, kind of solidified my thoughts that I think these auctions are that I think the watch market has kind of getting the inflation is coming down. That there were all these hype models that people were so enamored with that they were paying much more over retail. And this auctions, this week of auctions, I think, showed that I think people are being a little bit more sensible with the amount of money that they're spending on these watches. Now, there's 2 ways of looking at it, right? You could think, okay, the people who are bidding on these watches realize that they don't want to pay so much more over what the actual price for one of these watches is, whether it's a retail price or what the vintage market typically is, or the people who were actually making these watches go for such incredibly high prices have sort of exited stage left and are no longer bidding on these lots, which makes it a little bit less competitive. Just as an example, there was a original Cartier crash from London that sold at Phillips, and it was kind of one of the highlight lots of their auction. But what was super interesting is the bidding on this watch was really slow, and I don't even think it hit the bottom estimate that they placed on this watch. There was a lot of time between bids. There were not a lot of I think there were some phone bidders, but they really weren't super active on this. It almost felt like people were being cautious about some of these lots, and it goes for that $24.99 as well. People were just not bidding as quickly as I thought they would have, and again, it's twofold. Either the people have exited stage left, or the individuals who bid these watches up to such astronomical prices in the past have learned, and they've realized that buying something for a crazy multiple is not the best approach in this hobby. So I don't know which one it is, but either way, I do think we're getting back to the basics of maybe watch prices. I do think that whichever reason it is, I think that we're getting back to the idea that I always talk about when I talk about collecting watches, and that is you should buy watches because you love them, not because you think they're a good investment. And if the collectors who used to bid these watches up have become educated, they probably have realized that they want to buy specific pieces that they think are interesting, that they love, to wear on their wrists and get a lot of enjoyment out of. And I think that's a great direction that this is that this is going in. And if those people have left the collecting scene because they realize that they don't have the means now, or have lost interest in it because the watch that they purchased have lost a lot of value, either way, I think the market as a whole, or collectors as a whole, are now getting back to the idea that they want to buy watches because they love them. The prices that these watches are getting to are being realized because people truly love the watches. And I think that's a great thing for watch collecting. Now, looking into 2023, I think watch auctions are going to have plenty to say over the next year. I think watch auction houses have seen such rise in popularity of their watches, and I think this past week was another example of Christies, Phillips, Sotheby's, Antiquarian. They're all seeing continued interest in watches, which is really great to see. Phillips making this record of 2 consecutive years of 100% selling all lots, that's a great accomplishment. Christies and Sotheby's have seen incredible watches that they've been able to curate for their auctions, sell, and continued interest in a lot of these models that people love. So I almost feel like it's back to the basics of saying, these watches we have true collectors who really love the watches they're bidding on, and these watches are going to homes of owners that will cherish these watches forever. Not saying that they weren't before, but the speed and maybe I'll call them reasonable prices of these watches is kind of proving that point. There's been a lot of stuff about this on Instagram. I saw Watch Anish kind of post a couple of watches that sold at Phillips. I think there were I think there were some annual calendars, perpetual calendars from Audemars Piguet, the Royal Oaks, that sold for under what retail prices, which I thought was very interesting, especially being Royal Oaks, that are extremely desired by collectors. but under retail for those is kind of astonishing. And I do think it's going to have an impact on these, models in the secondhand market or the non-retail market prices of some of these watches. And we've seen that trend sort of continue. So it was a very interesting weekend. It was a lot of fun to participate and watch these auctions and see some really cool watches sell. I encourage you to check out our previous podcast if you want to see some of our favorite lots or my favorite lots for each of the auction houses. That's all I want to discuss during this podcast. We'll probably have maybe one or two. We'll probably have one more episode on the 20th of December that we'll be releasing. And I think that will be the last episode for season 3 of this podcast, which is pretty incredible. We'll then take that last week to celebrate the holidays and enjoy the company of friends and family, which I encourage all of you to do as you wind down this year. If you are new to the Life from this podcast, be sure to follow us and share this with a friend who might be interested in watches. We publish a podcast every Tuesday, so stay tuned for season 4 coming in 2023. If you want to check out some more articles or videos from me, you can go to the links in the show notes where there will be links to our website, YouTube channel, and all of our social media pages, so be sure to check that out. If you are feeling generous and wouldn't mind leaving a rating on this podcast, it really does help me out and give me feedback on things we can do going into this new season. With that said, guys, thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and until next time.